Video for those who are not here last Thursday or Friday. If you were gone for football or if you were gone because you were sick, this is a great way for you to get caught up to what we were doing last week. All right, so let's get started. So this is what we started with last week. I had the class go to this place called polleverywhere.com and think of 1 to 3 words you think of whenever someone says environmental science, or when you hear the word environmental science, what do you think of? And so by yourself, wherever you are, just kind of think of some words that come to mind, or maybe some pictures that come to mind whenever someone says environmental science. I'll share mine here in a little bit. But before we do that, I am going to go through what we are going to learn today through this little video, and also a unit overview of what we'll be learning this 6 weeks. We will tackle the big question, and we will go through a few interesting things about natural resources in our world. So if you have your notebook right now, I'll go ahead and get it out so you can get caught up. The first thing I want you to write down is your learning goals. So on your notebook, you can write at the top or the title area of the page, and you can write Intro into Environmental Science. You can just write Intro ES, ES standing for Environmental Science, and then right below on the first line, write the learning goals. The learning goals are in this little corner right here, and you go ahead and write down, I will be able to explain the focus of environmental science and describe how we impact the world around us. So you'll have this every time you come into my classroom. You'll have a little learning goals, or 1 or 2 of those, and that just kind of helps you stay focused on the lesson and kind of just maintain an idea of why we're doing this or what your purpose is, and it gives you a goal to work towards. So you can walk away my class accomplished every single day. So let's go ahead and get started. If you are still writing those things down, just pause my video, and then I'm going to continue forward. Okay, so here is what we'll be covering this 6 weeks. We have major topics include what is environmental science, and so we'll cover that today. Next week, we'll be talking about the scientific method, how to publish scientific findings, which is a fancy way to say lab reports. We'll be talking about Earth's spheres, the water cycle. We'll actually build a water cycle lab, which is very exciting. We'll also learn about the biogeochemical nutrient cycles. It sounds really complicated, but it's not at all. Some assignments to look forward to, or not look forward to, is a lab safety quiz, which you guys did. Exit tickets, which will be after every lesson. Organic versus chemical lab, water cycle lab, field study, Unit 1 project, and Unit 1 test. So these are all dispersed throughout the 6 weeks, so don't become overwhelmed like, oh my gosh, these are all due really, really soon. They're not. I space them out so that you guys can have time to accomplish them. All right, so let's move forward to the big question. The big Q today is, how do we impact our environment? And the big question is just a focus. This is what we're going to be learning about today, and this keeps me focused on what I want to teach you. And so by the end of this lesson, I want you to really be able to think about, how do we impact our environment? Okay, so I have some funny pictures right here. Of course, they didn't play right. Usually I had a little clicker and they would pop up one at a time. But anyways, this is what I think. When someone tells me environmental science, or when I first started learning about environmental science many years ago, I was like, okay, I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not a liberal. I don't march around Washington, D.C. with signs about saving whales and turtles and everything under the sun. And so whenever I heard environmental science, I was like, I don't know about this subject at all. But you know, just to be kind of funny, I think of, if I can move this over a little bit, I have a picture of Willie Nelson, and there he is right there. So I think of hippies playing guitars and loving the world and the earth and living in communes. However, this is far from what environmental science truly is. So I found this quote from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was our president during the Great Depression and the World War II. So at his memorial in Washington, D.C., this is a quote from him that's inscribed on his memorial. And he says, "Men and nature must work hand in hand. The throwing out of balance of the resources of nature throws out of balance, also the lives of men. So let that sink in. I know it sounds kind of like an old-timey talk, but just kind of let that, read it a couple times, think about it. Understand that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was our president during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, not only did the stock market crash, but we had overproduced a lot of the soil in America, meaning that there was no more nutrients left in the soil. Therefore, we couldn't grow anything. And so everything turned into dirt. And when there's no soil to hold down plants, just dirt kicks up and it's just an absolute mess. And so since there was no vegetation, we just had dirt, clouds everywhere, and just everyone's homes were filled with dirt. No one was making money. And so he realized that, oh my goodness, if we overproduce, if we're not taking care of the land that we have, it could definitely affect us in our daily lives and our nation and our money and everything like that. So it's a very interesting way to put that, and it kind of wakes me up in a sense, saying that, just because you don't have to go march in Washington, and you don't have to be a tree hugger to take care of your world. It is something that we should do as humans of this earth to take care of the world around us. Okay, so here is your first set of notes. So go ahead and write this down. What is environmental science? So write down this little definition. Actually, these are really your only notes today, so if you just go ahead and copy down the slide, I'll just go through it. If I end up clicking the slide to the next slide too early, you're welcome to pause this video and make sure you get things written down. Okay, so what is environmental science? Environmental science is a study of our planets, natural systems, and how humans and the environment affect one another. Okay, so all that fancy talk just says it's a study of our earth and how we interact with it, what we do to it, and what it does to us. Okay, vice versa. The environment includes all living and non-living things that interact. So if you look in the picture, you can see it's kind of like a crazy looking picture, but you can see buildings, you can see animals, you can see the world, you can see oceans, you can see a whale in space, LOL, but just know that these are non-living and living things that are interacting and changing each other for the worse or for the better. Okay, so to start solving problems, scientists try to understand interactions between humans and the environment. So scientists look at these natural systems, and they look at how humans impact it or how it impacts us. And that's how they begin to start solving problems to maintain the world we live in, which is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to move forward. If you need to stop, go ahead and pause. All right, so here we go. This is environmental science versus environmentalism. Okay, so take a second, and I want you to, by yourself, I want you to look at these two pictures and distinguish what you think is environmental science or environmentalism. Just take a few seconds. All right, if you looked at the picture with the crazy lady in her Liberty outfit, Statue of Liberty outfit, and she has a sign, no oil trains, they're trying to stop fossil fuels, like she's marching for something, that would be considered environmentalism. She would be an environmentalist, and that is a far cry from what environmental science is. Environmental science is an actual science. You look at the people with a microscope, a clipboard, they're looking at plants, they're evaluating, they're actually doing science. They're actually trying to solve the problem, not just bring awareness to it. So that's what we're going to be doing this year, is we're actually going to use science to look at problems and try to solve them, which is way more beneficial than just marching around in a crazy suit with a bunch of buttons. All right, moving forward. So if you were in class, we did a little activity where we had to sort what we thought was a renewable resource, a non-renewable resource, or a sustainable resource. So if you look at this picture right here, there's three different types of resources. They're all natural, okay? They're all made from the earth. They're not synthetic. They're not made by human chemicals or us in a lab. They're actually made by earth. But some of them are renewable, some of them are non-renewable, and some of them are sustainable. So what I would like for you to do is you use your book or Google and look up the definitions for renewable, sustainable, and non-renewable. Okay, so those three vocabulary words: renewable, sustainable, and non-renewable. So take some time, pause the video, go to Google, define those words, and then click play. All right, so since you clicked play and you've looked at those definitions, I'm going to continue forward. So if you looked at not renewable resources, those are resources that are easily renewable. In fact, next to that vocabulary word you wrote in your notebook, I want you to write consistent, okay? These are consistently renewable resources. They're always going to be there, okay? So for instance, we are always going to have sunlight, okay? As the sun's going to rise every day, which is a great thing. If it doesn't rise that day, then we all would freeze. The entire world would. Whether the clouds are there or whether we can see the sun or not, it's still up. Wind is always consistent, whether it's windy or not. Waves are always going to happen because of the gravitational pull of the Earth and the moon. And then geothermal energy is just how the core of the Earth is all like hot and magma and everything. They can actually pull that heat from the Earth and create steam out of it, and so that's what we consider renewable. So these things are consistent. They're always going to be there. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have non-renewable resources. That's going to be crude oil, natural gas, coal, copper, and and aluminum and other metals. So these right here, which are very near and dear to our area here at Midland, Texas, but these resources take millions and thousands of years to produce. So we're actually, whenever, maybe you have your parents in the oil field and maybe they're drillers or engineers, but when we pull the oil out of the earth, that oil was formed by fossil fuels thousands and millions of years ago. Here in the Permian Basin, the Permian Basin and through an ancient ocean. I'll go more into it next semester, but it's very interesting. But it's created from dead living animals, or once living dead animals that have been compacted over millions of years, and they formed into oil. Crazy. So those don't just come up every single day. It's not like sunlight. It's not there every day. It's not renewed every day. It takes a long time. So that's why we only have so much of it, because obviously we don't live for millions of years, and we're probably not going to see oil, the same oil again for a very long time. So that's why it's non-renewable. In the middle, we have freshwater, forest products, agricultural crops, and soils. So this is what we think. These are the things we call sustainable. Okay, so that means that they can be renewed, but it takes a lot more time. Okay, not as long as a non-renewable resource, not thousands and millions of years, for instance, but they could go away, and it would take maybe a few more years for them to renew. Okay, so for example, fresh water. Here in Midland, Texas, a few years back, we had a drought. Our reservoirs where we take our water for our groundwater, or the water we use to shower with, a lot of our water was dried up, and so we really had to use our water sparingly. In fact, they had a water ban where we could only water our yard once a week, so all our plants died, trees died. It was a hot mess, but we got water again. It just took a little more time, and we had to, pray for rain, and now we're okay. Sending us forest products. We go out, we mow down an entire forest. It's going to take maybe 50 years for those trees to come back and be at that same caliber as they were when we tore them down. So we're going to have to wait another 50 years for paper or for wood or all those things. So we have to use those things sustainably. We have to use them in small increments. We just can't wipe it out or use it all at one time. That's why it's called sustainable. So we have renewable, sustainable, and non-renewable. Let's move forward. All right, population growth. So here's where we run into problems, because with more people using more resources, than the less that we have. So for instance, back like 8,000 BC, people started, instead of like walking around and like chasing woolly mammoth and their food, like they were just nomads. They just like walked around looking for food. They didn't have a home, they didn't have a city. But eventually they started settling and farming. Farming requires people to settle because they have to have crops. And you can't just grow a squash overnight, right? It takes a few months to be able to grow. So they had to stop, and they had to, form together and make a city and all those things. And so once people started doing that, people started living longer, okay? They weren't living until they were like 50 years old. Their living extended for a long time because of the quality of life. So the same thing when we got to the 1700s in Britain, they had an industrial revolution. So they were able to use machine power to build stuff, to make stuff, to produce stuff. And so that helped a lot of people out too. People had a longer life. There was more things for people to use, and the quality of life got better. So with that, people live longer. Now we have 7 billion people in the world, and we only have one world. So that means that there's more resources that are being used, and which creates problems because we're going to run out if we don't use it sustainably, or if we don't use it in a responsible manner. And so that's kind of this whole focus of this lesson, is just kind of how we impact our environment through population, through the different things that we do, the different resources that we use. So before we close this lesson up, I have this thing called the Ecological Footprint. You're welcome to do this on your own. I want you to go to Ecological Footprint Calculator. In fact, if you wanted to just type that into Google, Ecological Footprint Calculator, you can go on and take this test. You'll type in your email, and it's a really fun quiz. Basically what it does, it just shows you how much resources you use on a daily basis. And then it's going to compare you to the rest of the world. And it's going to show you how many Earths it would take if everyone lived like you. Okay, so if everyone lived like you on a daily basis, it shows you how many worlds it would take to keep up with the resources that you use. So it's going to compare your gas, your electricity, your home, your food intake, like if you eat a lot of meat, all those things, and it's going to compare you to the rest of the world. Also, it's going to give you a date. Okay, it might be sometime in February. It's been kind of an average, and it's going to tell you if everyone lived like you every day, the world would run out of resources on that date. So it's very interesting. It's not anything that's real. It's just kind of a wake-up call in a sense for us to like, hey, don't try to use all the resources of the world. Also, there is a picture of, I'm going to kind of just throw this into the right here. That's not going to help me. This is the world's ecological footprint. So America is a deep red. Okay, look right there. There's like a deep red. We're actually we're the worst consumers in the entire world. The blue, as you can tell, are third world countries. Those are countries who really don't have anything. The darker it goes from blue to red shows how much we consume, how much resources we use, where it's almost ridiculous because we won't have anything else left if we keep using it in this manner. And so it's a kind of a really interesting way, but we're the worst in the entire world. So think about Americans, we pretty much get what we want when we want. So look at here compared to the rest of the world, we are the worst consumers. We use all the resources without anything. We don't have any consideration of our resources compared to this map. So just kind of take a look at it. It's going to be on your exit ticket. I'm going to ask you, how would you describe America's ecological footprint compared to the world? Really, really bad. What you can put. We consume everything. So take the test, look at the map, and then when you get finished, just make sure you have all the notes. And if you need to scroll backwards, if you missed something I said, you can always do that. Otherwise, if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.